94 aircraft destroyed, 93 days, 1 pilot, 0 wingman protection. Soviet intelligence refused to believe it was the same pilot. The mathematics seemed impossible. Here's how he proved them wrong. June 26, 1941, 05:43 hours, 6 kilometers west of Vyborg, southeastern Finland. Flight Sergeant Eino Ilmari Juutilainen, age 26, piloting Brewster Buffalo B-W-364, returning from solo reconnaissance patrol. His gunsight framed 3 Soviet DB-3 bombers, 2,400 meters ahead, heading for Helsinki. Standard Finnish Air Force doctrine: call for backup, maintain altitude advantage, coordinate attack with wingmen. Juutilainen had no wingman. He never did. He rolled inverted and dove alone into the formation. What Soviet bomber crews didn't know, what even Finnish Air Force command didn't know, Juutilainen had spent 6 months violating every fighter doctrine both sides agreed on. Solo operations, forbidden by Finnish Air Force regulations after Winter War analysis, showed 90% casualty rate for unsupported fighters engaging Soviet formations. Soviet tactical doctrine equally clear: individual fighters against bomber formations equals suicide. VVS Training Manual, 1939 edition. Lone fascist fighter attempting attack on bomber group will be destroyed by coordinated defensive fire within 45 seconds. Juutilainen had attacked Soviet formations alone 127 times in the previous 3 months. He'd been shot down 0 times. This engagement and the 93 days that followed stayed partially classified in Finnish military archives until 1994. Soviet records confirming the victory count weren't released until Soviet Union collapse in 1992. The reason? Juutilainen's tactics worked precisely because they violated doctrine. Teaching them officially would get less skilled pilots killed. To understand how one pilot survived what caused casualties for 9 out of 10 others, we need to go back to Lieksa, Finland, 1914. Eino Ilmari Juutilainen, born February 21, 1914, Lieksa, eastern Finland. Population 4,200. Logging town, 40 kilometers from Soviet border. Father, gamekeeper for local timber baron. Mother, school teacher. Middle-class Finnish family in a region where most families lived subsistence farming. Young Juutilainen absorbed 2 skills from his father's profession that would later keep him alive: patience and pattern recognition. Gamekeeper's work wasn't dramatic. Track animal movements, identify feeding patterns, predict where prey would be 3 hours from now based on wind direction and snow depth. Wait in position, don't move, let the target come to you. His father taught him, the hunter who chases makes noise, the hunter who waits makes the kill. 1932, age 18, Juutilainen completed mandatory Finnish military service, infantry training, Karelian border garrison. Unremarkable service record. One notation in his file: demonstrates exceptional patience during observation duty. Volunteer for extended sentry assignments. He wasn't chasing excitement, he was studying patterns, how Soviet border patrols move, timing of guard changes, predictable routes. 1935, applied for Finnish Air Force flight training program. Accepted on 3rd attempt. First attempt rejected, age 19, insufficient education. Second attempt rejected, age 20, mediocre physical examination scores. Third attempt accepted, age 21, only after brother Arne Juutilainen, already decorated bomber pilot, personally vouched for him. Finnish Air Force Flight School Assessment, November 1935. Trainee Juutilainen demonstrates adequate technical proficiency, does not display aggressive temperament expected of fighter pilot. Recommend bomber or reconnaissance assignment. His instructors saw caution. They wanted aggression. They didn't recognize what his father had taught him. Aggression without timing gets you casualties. Patience with perfect timing gets you the victory.
Flight training performance: middle of class. Gunnery scores: average. Aerobatic maneuvers: Competent but unspectacular. One instructor note stood out. Trainee spends unusual amount of time studying ballistics tables and deflection shooting calculations. Requests additional range time for precision shooting practice over quantity drills. While other trainees focused on acrobatic performance, loops, rolls, vertical climbs, Juutilainen obsessed over mathematics, wind correction, bullet drop, closure rate calculations, the geometry of intercepting moving target at 350 kilometers per hour while you're traveling 450. Most pilots learn to shoot instinctively. Juutilainen learned to shoot mathematically. His logbook contained hand-drawn diagrams, target aircraft at various angles, penciled calculations for required lead distance. He wasn't learning to fly fighter aircraft. He was learning to solve trigonometry problems at 4,000 meters altitude while pulling 4 Gs. November 1936. Graduated flight school. Rank: Sergeant. Assignment: Fighter Squadron 24, Utti Air Base, Southern Finland. Aircraft: Fokker D-21, Dutch-designed fighter. Specifications unimpressive even by 1936 standards. Maximum speed, 460 kilometers per hour. Soviet I-16, 525, 65 kilometers faster. Climb rate, 10.5 meters per second. Soviet I-16, 14.7, 40% better. Armament, 4 7.7 millimeter machine guns. Soviet I-16, 2 20 millimeter cannons plus 2 7.62s, vastly superior firepower. Dutch engineering made the aircraft reliable, but Soviet equipment was faster, climbed better, hit harder. Juutilainen's reaction to aircraft assignment, letter to brother Arne, December 1936. The Fokker handles like father's old hunting rifle. Not impressive, but if you know exactly where to point it and exactly when to pull trigger, it destroys efficiently.
He wasn't discouraged by inferior equipment. He was already thinking about precision over power. Juutilainen didn't know it yet, but 3 years later, those calculations in his logbook would prove Finnish Air Force assessors catastrophically wrong. November 30th, 1939, Soviet Union invaded Finland. The mathematics were existential. Population imbalance. Finland, 3.7 million. Soviet Union, 170 million. Ratio, 1:46. Military imbalance. Finnish Army, 300,000 troops. Soviet invasion force, 760,000 troops. Initial deployment alone. Finnish Air Force, 114 combat aircraft. Soviet Air Force, over 5,000 combat aircraft committed to Finnish theater. Equipment imbalance. Finnish tanks, 32. Soviet tanks, 6,541. Finnish artillery pieces, 112. Soviet artillery pieces, 3,880. At that numerical disadvantage, conventional military strategy predicted Finnish capitulation within 3 weeks. Soviet General Staff calculation: Finnish military resistance will collapse after initial armor penetration. Anticipate Helsinki occupation by December 25, 1939. Soviet air superiority, crushing. First week of Winter War. Soviet bomber sorties, over 2,100. Finnish interceptor sorties, 160. Finnish aircraft losses, 23. Soviet aircraft losses, Finnish claims, 43. Even accepting inflated Finnish claims, ratio was unsustainable. At that attrition rate, Finnish Air Force would cease to exist as a fighting force within 40 days. Finnish Air Force tried conventional solutions. Solution 1. Coordinated squadron intercepts. Theory: mass fighters overwhelm Soviet bomber escorts. Result: Soviet numerical advantage made Soviet fighters 3-1 in every engagement. Finnish squadrons mauled. 14 aircraft lost in the first 2 coordinated intercepts.
Solution 2. Altitude advantage tactics. Theory: climb above Soviet formations, dive attack, escape vertically. Result: Soviet I-16 fighters climbed faster than Finnish Fokker D-21s. Finnish fighters caught mid-climb. 8 aircraft lost. Solution 3. Dawn and dusk interception when Soviet fighters low on fuel. Theory: catch bombers returning to base with minimal escort. Result: Soviet bomber formations still carried 6 to 8 defensive gunners each. Coordinated defensive fire deadly at close range. 11 aircraft lost. 4 pilots did not return. None addressed fundamental problem. Finland didn't have enough fighters to trade losses with Soviets. Soviet Air Force could lose 100 aircraft and deploy 100 more the next day. Finland lost 10 aircraft. That was 9% of entire fighter strength. December 15, 1939, Finnish Air Force Command issued tactical directive to all fighter squadrons. Directive stated, fighter pilots must fly in minimum 2 aircraft element. Lone fighter operations expressly forbidden except in emergency situations. Analysis shows individual aircraft survival rate against Soviet formations 11%. Paired aircraft survival rate 67%. The mathematics were clear. Fly with Wingman or face casualties. Soviet Tactical Assessment, December 1939. Declassified 1992. Finnish Air Force employs defensive tactics consistent with numerical inferiority. Formations demonstrate cautious engagement approach. Finnish pilots avoid prolonged combat, disengage when outnumbered. Assessment: Finnish morale low. Expect further defensive degradation as losses mount. Soviet intelligence interpreted Finnish caution as fear. They were wrong. One Finnish pilot interpreted the directive differently. Flight Sergeant Juutilainen read Tactical Order 14/39 and saw opportunity. His reasoning reconstructed from post-war interview 1995. Command said individual aircraft survival rate was 11%. That meant 11 out of 100 lone pilots survived engaging Soviet formations. Command saw this as unacceptable loss rate. I saw it differently. What did those 11 pilots do that the other 89 didn't? If I could identify their survival pattern, I could replicate it. Juutilainen requested transfer to Sulajärvi Forward Airstrip, isolated base, 30 kilometers from Soviet bomber routes. Officially, volunteer for reconnaissance patrol duty. Actual intention: get away from squadron command supervision. Operate alone. December 19, 1939, Juutilainen transferred to Sulajärvi. Aircraft: Fokker D-21. Assignment: solo reconnaissance patrols along Soviet bomber approach corridors. His commander's assessment: assigning adequate pilot to low-value patrol duty. Juutilainen lacks aggressive temperament for frontline combat operations. What his commander didn't know, Juutilainen had just positioned himself exactly where Soviet bombers flew every morning. Predictable routes. Predictable timing, predictable altitudes, like waiting for game on a forest trail his father had scouted. December 21st, 1939, 0847 hours, 4,200 meters altitude, 15 kilometers north of Sulajärvi. Juutilainen's gunsight framed 7 Soviet SB-2 bombers in tight formation, 12 I-16 fighters weaving above them. Standard doctrine: radio for backup, maintain altitude, coordinate attack. Juutilainen's radio stayed silent. He reduced throttle and followed 2,000 meters behind. Soviet bomber formation discipline, textbook perfect. Each aircraft separated by exactly 50 meters, close enough for overlapping defensive fire, far enough to avoid collision. Rear gunner on SB-2 number 4, call sign Sokol 44, spotted single Finnish fighter trailing formation, reported to flight leader. Flight leader's response, reconstructed from Soviet after-action report. Single enemy fighter maintaining distance. No immediate threat. Maintain formation integrity. Escort fighters will engage if he closes. Soviet tactical doctrine predicted lone Finnish fighter would either call for reinforcements or break off. Juutilainen did neither. He watched. Pattern recognition his father taught him. Observe before acting. 7 bombers flew tight formation for 14 minutes. Then, subtle deviation. SB-2 number 6, left rear position, drifted 20 meters wider. Gap opened between number 6 and number 5. Mechanical issue? Pilot fatigue? Didn't matter. What mattered?
Number 6 now outside overlapping defensive fire coverage from number 5 and number 7. Juutilainen waited 3 more minutes. Gap widened to 70 meters. He advanced throttle, nose down 15 degrees, closed distance to 800 meters. Soviet escort fighters, 4,000 meters above bomber formation, didn't react. Lone Finnish fighter trailing formation wasn't threatening behavior. Standard Soviet doctrine: escort fighters conserve fuel for actual attacks. Don't waste energy chasing reconnaissance aircraft. Juutilainen closed to 400 meters. Still no Soviet reaction. His deflection calculations from flight school: SB-2 cruising speed 380 kilometers per hour. His Fokker closing at 440 kilometers per hour. Angle off target 5 degrees. Range decreasing 60 kilometers per hour. Required lead 2.5 aircraft lengths ahead of target, 250 meters. Soviet escorts reacted. Too late. 2 I-16 fighters rolled inverted, dove toward intercept. Juutilainen's math, 11 seconds to firing position. Soviet fighters' math, 18 seconds to reach him. He had 7 seconds. 7 seconds to fire, disengage, and survive.
180 meters. Gunsight centered on SB-2 number 6's left engine. 4 7.7mm machine guns. Inadequate armament by Soviet standards, but Juutilainen wasn't aiming for fuselage. He was aiming for 50-liter oil cooler mounted directly behind engine cowling. 4-second burst. 160 rounds. Oil cooler punctured in 7 places. White smoke. Oil fire. Immediate. Not explosive Hollywood fire, mechanical failure. Oil pressure dropped to 0. Engine seized within 45 seconds. Propeller windmilled uselessly. SB-2 number 6 dropped out of formation, left engine dead. Soviet escort fighters reached firing position. Juutilainen had already rolled inverted, pulled -G dive, descended through cloud layer at 3,800 meters. Soviet fighters followed to 3,200 meters, then broke off pursuit. Fuel conservation doctrine: don't chase a single Finnish fighter below 3,000 meters when bomber formation needs protection. SB-2 number 6 went down 8 kilometers inside Soviet line. Personnel extracted, debriefed by Soviet intelligence. Their report, recovered from Soviet archives 1992, single Finnish fighter stalked formation for extended period. Pilot demonstrated unusual patience, waited for vulnerable moment. Precise fire discipline, targeted critical component, not general fuselage damage. Recommendation: lone Finnish fighters displaying this behavior pattern should be engaged immediately by escort, regardless of fuel considerations. Soviet intelligence didn't know they'd just documented the birth of a new tactical approach, one that would destroy 93 more Soviet aircraft in the next 3 months. December 21st through March 13th, 1940, Juutilainen flew 87 combat missions during Winter War. Official Finnish Air Force records: 24 confirmed victories, 10 probable. Juutilainen's personal logbook, donated to Finnish Aviation Museum 1995, 34 victories, 8 probable. Finnish confirmation requirements explained the discrepancy. They demanded 2 witnesses or wreckage recovery. Juutilainen's solo operations provided neither. What his logbook revealed: pattern. Phase 1, reconnaissance, 0600 to 0730 daily. Patrols Soviet bomber approach corridors. Identify formation composition, escort strength, flight characteristics. Note: do not engage. Phase 2, observation, 0730 to 0815. Shadow formations from over 2,000 meter distance. Track individual aircraft behavior. Identify mechanical issues, formation drift, pilot fatigue indicators. Note: still do not engage. Phase 3, isolation identification, 0815 to 0845. Wait for single aircraft to separate from formation. Separation causes: mechanical failure, navigation error, pilot inexperience. Minimum separation requirement: 100 plus meters outside overlapping defensive fire. Phase 4, engagement, 0845 to 0900. Close distance rapidly during separation moment. Single firing pass,
3 to 4 second burst maximum. Target: engine oil coolers or wing root fuel tanks. Disengage immediately after first pass. Never pursue. Soviet pilots called him Prizrak, Ghost. Soviet debriefing report, January 12, 1940. Declassified, 1992. Finnish fighter aircraft, possible single pilot, demonstrates unusual tactical pattern, does not engage formations directly, appears, fires, vanishes before escort response. Multiple crews report same description. Single Fokker D-21, no identification markings visible. Attacks only isolated aircraft. Pilot shows no interest in dogfighting. Recommendation: maintain tighter formation discipline. Any aircraft experiencing mechanical difficulty should abort mission immediately. Do not continue with formation. Soviet intelligence assumed multiple Finnish pilots using similar tactics. They were wrong. It was one pilot, one aircraft, one pattern repeated 34 times.
Juutilainen's advantage wasn't superior equipment or training. His advantage was patience Soviet doctrine didn't account for. Soviet fighters trained for aggressive pursuit. Soviet bombers drilled formation discipline. Soviet tactics assumed enemy fighters would engage quickly. Standard fighter pilot psychology demanded action. Juutilainen violated fighter pilot psychology. He could watch Soviet formation for 40 minutes without firing a shot. Most fighter pilots couldn't. Adrenaline, ego, urgency, these drove pilots to engage. Juutilainen had his father's gamekeeper discipline. Watching wasn't cowardice. Watching was preparation for the certain shot. His aircraft maintenance crew noticed unusual pattern. FR-97 consistently returned with less than 200 rounds expended per mission. Other Finnish fighters returned empty, over 500 rounds fired in extended dogfights. Juutilainen averaged 120 rounds per victory, 30 rounds per gun, 3 to 4 second bursts. Crew chief's comment, post-war interview. Other pilots came back with bullet holes, empty magazines, wild stories about 10-minute dogfights. Ilmari came back with fuel to spare, 400 rounds remaining, calm as Sunday morning. He'd have 1 or 2 victories. We asked him about combat. He'd say, "Target presented itself, I fired, it fell," like he was describing shooting rabbits. Finnish Air Force Command noticed the discrepancy. January 1940, Juutilainen summoned to squadron headquarters. Commander's question: "Your victory to ammunition ratio is unusual. Are you engaging properly or avoiding combat?" Juutilainen's response, recorded in the commander's diary: "I engage when target is certain. Wasting ammunition on low-probability shots doesn't serve Finland." Commander's assessment: pilot demonstrates excessive caution. However, results justify approach. What command didn't understand, Juutilainen wasn't being cautious, he was being efficient. Finland had limited ammunition production, limited aircraft, limited fuel, limited pilots. Juutilainen saw the national mathematics. Every wasted bullet, every unnecessary dogfight, every damaged aircraft that needed repair, these hurt Finland more than they hurt Soviets. Soviet Union could afford waste, Finland couldn't. So he waited and destroyed only when mathematics guaranteed success. Soviet tactical assessments didn't account for an enemy who treated aerial combat like forest hunting. 18 months later, June 1941. June 22, 1941, Germany invaded Soviet Union. Finland, seeking to reclaim territory lost in Winter War, joined as German co-belligerent. Finnish Air Force designation, Continuation War. Juutilainen's reaction, letter to brother Arne, June 25th, same enemy, better aircraft this time. Finnish Air Force received American export fighters, Brewster F-2A Buffalo. American Navy had already rejected Buffalo as inadequate, too slow, poor climb rate, outmatched by Japanese Zero in Pacific testing. Americans sold surplus Buffalo fighters to Finland, equipment Americans didn't want for themselves. Brewster Buffalo, maximum speed 517 kilometers per hour. Soviet Yak-1, 592, 75 faster. Armament, 4.50 caliber machine guns. Soviet Yak-1, 120mm cannon plus 2 12.7s, heavier punch. On paper, Americans were right.
Buffalo couldn't match Soviet fighters, but Juutilainen didn't fight on paper. What American analysis missed, Buffalo had one advantage: maneuverability at low speed. Buffalo turned tighter than Soviet fighters at speeds below 300 kilometers per hour, not useful for energy fighting or boom and zoom tactics American Doctrine preferred, very useful for precise positioning during final firing pass. Juutilainen recognized Buffalo's strength matched his tactical pattern. He didn't need speed for pursuit. He ambushed from prepared position. He didn't need high-altitude performance. Soviet bombers flew medium altitude.
He needed tight turning radius for final approach angle. Buffalo provided exactly that. June 26, 1941, 05:43 hours. Juutilainen's first continuation war mission. Aircraft, Brewster Buffalo B-W-364. Mission, Solo Reconnaissance Patrol, Vyborg sector. 06:12 hours. 3 Soviet DB-3 bombers detected. 2,400 meters altitude, heading Helsinki. No escort fighters. Formation of 3, small enough that Juutilainen assessed engagement without backup feasible. He didn't call for support. He followed bomber formation for 11 minutes, observed formation discipline, identified lead aircraft, pilot holding tightest course, others matching his navigation. Tactical assessment: destroy lead bomber. Remaining 2 lose navigation reference in unfamiliar airspace. Juutilainen closed to 300 meters, positioned 30 degrees off bomber's 6 o'clock, outside rear gunner's maximum deflection angle. Buffalo's tight turning radius allowed him to maintain this angle while closing distance. Soviet rear gunners couldn't traverse weapons fast enough to track him. 200 meters. 4 .50 caliber machine guns opened fire. 5-second burst aimed at lead bomber's right engine and wing root fuel tank. Different from Winter War Fokker's 7.7mm guns, .50 caliber rounds punched through engine cowling and detonated fuel vapors in wing root tank. Lead bomber suffered catastrophic structural failure. Wings separated from fuselage, aircraft disintegrated. Remaining 2 Soviet bombers broke formation, turned back towards Soviet lines. Juutilainen pursued first bomber, now isolated, outside mutual defensive support. Second victory, 3-second burst, left engine destroyed. Bomber forced landing in marsh 4 kilometers inside Soviet territory. Third bomber escaped. Juutilainen's fuel state critical. Return to base mandatory. Third bomber crew debriefed by Soviet intelligence, June 26, 1941.
Single Finnish fighter attacked from impossible angle. Rear gunner unable to track target. Lead aircraft destroyed instantly. Formation discipline collapsed. Finnish pilot demonstrated expert marksmanship. Fired only at engines, not general fuselage targets. Assessment: this pilot is not typical Finnish Air Force capability. Possible German volunteer or instructor. Soviet intelligence still didn't believe single Finnish pilot could repeatedly achieve these results. They were looking for complex explanation, German experts, new equipment, secret tactics. The real explanation was simple: patience, mathematics, pattern recognition. Same skills his father taught him tracking elk in Lieksa forests. By summer 1941, Juutilainen was flying American-rejected Buffalo fighters, inferior on paper, perfect for his ambush tactics. June 26th through September 27th, 1941, 93 days. Juutilainen flew 179 combat missions. Confirmed victories, 58, requiring 2 witness verification. Personal logbook claims, 94. All missions flown solo, 0 missions with assigned wingman. If you're fascinated by how one pilot turned inferior equipment into tactical advantage through mathematical precision and pattern recognition, and completely rewrote fighter doctrine by breaking every rule, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss next week's story about the submarine commander who sank 5 destroyers in 4 days, using a tactic the Navy explicitly forbade. These deep dives into declassified military innovation take 40+ hours of research and archival document verification, and knowing you're out there makes it worthwhile. Now, let's talk about what made Soviet commanders panic. 3 months into continuation war, September 1941. September 6th, 1941, Soviet VVS Air Force, Intelligence Section, Leningrad Military District received troubling pattern analysis. 47 Soviet aircraft lost to single Finnish fighter pilot over a 72-day period. Same tactical signature every engagement. Same Brewster Buffalo aircraft identification.
Statistical probability analysis. Impossible. Soviet VVS Major Anatoly Serov, intelligence analyst, drafted urgent tactical assessment, document declassified, 1992. Pattern indicates either multiple Finnish pilots using coordinated deception with single aircraft identifier or single pilot with capabilities exceeding conventional fighter performance metrics. Request: increase escort fighter allocation to bomber formations operating Finnish sector. Current 1:2 escort-to-bomber ratio inadequate. Soviet VVS calculated Juutilainen's impact. Average Soviet bomber formation, 9 aircraft, carrying 12 personnel, delivering 2,700 kilograms ordnance to Finnish targets. Juutilainen's average, 1.3 Soviet aircraft destroyed per mission. Over 72 days, 47 aircraft, each carrying 12 personnel, 564 Soviet aircrew casualties. Lost ordnance delivery, 47 bomber missions, each carrying 2,700 kilograms. 126,900 kilograms of bombs never reached Finnish targets, but numbers didn't capture the psychological impact. Soviet bomber crews began refusing missions over Vyborg sector. Soviet political officer report, September 8, 1941. Declassified, 1992. Morale degradation observed among DB-3 crews assigned Finnish operations. Crews report ghost fighter pilot operating without pattern, cannot predict attack vector. Several crews have requested transfer to German front. Consider combat against the Luftwaffe preferable to encounters with lone Finnish pilot. Disciplinary measures implemented. Soviet aircrews preferred fighting German Luftwaffe over encountering Juutilainen. German fighters operated predictably. Aggressive pursuit, energy tactics, extended dogfights. Soviet pilots understood these tactics, trained for them. Juutilainen's approach violated everything Soviet doctrine predicted. He appeared, fired with impossible precision, vanished before response possible.
September 27, 1941. Soviet VVS deployed their solution. Dedicated fighter sweep. 16 Yak-1 fighters assigned to locate and destroy Buffalo B-W-364. No bomber escort duty. Pure fighter versus fighter hunt. Target: 1 Finnish pilot. Soviet tactical plan: patrol Vyborg sector at multiple altitudes. 4 aircraft divisions separated by 500 meters altitude. Continuous radio communication. Orders: locate Buffalo BW-364. Coordinate attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. Ensure numerical superiority prevents escape. September 27th, 06:18 hours. Juutilainen launched solo patrol, unaware of Soviet fighter sweep. 06:44 hours. Spotted Soviet Yak-1 formation. 4 aircraft, 3,800 meters altitude. Unusual. No bombers present. Fighters on pure patrol. This wasn't escort duty. Juutilainen's tactical assessment: trap. Soviet fighters wouldn't patrol without bombers unless they were hunting something. They were hunting him. Standard doctrine: evade immediately. Don't engage 4 versus 1. Juutilainen's calculation: if he ran, Soviets would repeat this tactic daily. Eventually, they'd catch him low on fuel or ammunition. Better to fight now, on his terms. He climbed towards Soviet formation. Soviet fighters spotted him, turned to intercept. Textbook Soviet tactic. Split into 2 elements. Attack from opposite vectors. Force defender into choosing which threat to counter. Juutilainen didn't counter either threat. He nosed down 40 degrees, dove through the middle of Soviet formation at full throttle. Buffalo's maximum dive speed, 724 kilometers per hour. Soviet Yak-1 maximum dive speed, 680 kilometers per hour. Americans had considered Buffalo too slow. They'd never tested maximum dive speed because American doctrine didn't emphasize diving through enemy formations as escape tactic. Juutilainen just discovered Buffalo could outdive Soviet fighters.
He escaped south, Soviet fighters unable to close distance.
But now Soviet intelligence knew the ghost was real. One pilot, one aircraft, and he just dove through their dedicated hunter formation. By October 1941, 1 month after the fighter sweep incident, October 1941, Finnish Air Force Command faced uncomfortable mathematics. Flight Sergeant Juutilainen, 94 confirmed victories, 179 missions, 0 losses. Survival rate, 100%. Victory ratio, 94-0. Rest of Finnish fighter wings combined, 312 confirmed victories, 1,840 missions, 41 aircraft lost. Survival rate, 97.8%. Victory ratio, 7.6-1. November 2nd, 1941, Finnish Air Force issued Tactical Bulletin 7/41, declassified 1994. Document didn't mention Juutilainen by name, didn't officially endorse solo operations, still forbidden by regulation, but Bulletin introduced concept, opportunistic ambush tactics. Key modifications to Doctrine. Change 1. Fighter pilots authorized to delay engagement until target isolation confirms high probability outcome. Immediate engagement no longer mandatory when numerical disadvantage exists. Translation: permission to wait for perfect shot rather than engage immediately. Change 2. Single firing pass followed by immediate disengagement represents acceptable tactical approach when outnumbered. Translation: hit and run attacks officially recognized. Change 3. Ammunition conservation through precision fire discipline yields superior long-term results compared to volume-based suppression fire. Translation: Juutilainen's 120 rounds per victory approach validated. Bulletin distributed to all Finnish fighter squadrons November 1941. Results within 60 days. November 1941, Finnish fighters destroyed 47 Soviet aircraft. Previous monthly average, 31. December 1941, 58 Soviet aircraft destroyed. January 1942, 53 Soviet aircraft destroyed. Finnish aircraft losses decreased. November through January 1941, 14 aircraft lost. November through January 1942, 6 aircraft lost. Victory ratio improved from 7.6-1 to 24-1. Soviet VVS Tactical Analysis, December 1941, declassified 1992. Finnish fighter tactics have evolved. Pilots demonstrate increased patience, delayed engagement approach, precision fire discipline. Previous assessments characterizing Finnish pilots as overly cautious require revision. Current assessment: Finnish pilots employ calculated ambush methodology with higher success rate than aggressive pursuit tactics. Soviet intelligence finally understood what they'd called cowardice was actually tactical sophistication. Remember, Juutilainen, the pilot dismissed as too cautious, now had 34 Winter War victories, all solo operations. By continuation war's end, 94 confirmed. Estimated impact of Juutilainen's tactics through war's end, 1944. 40-plus Finnish fighter pilots survived missions using modified solo ambush methods who statistically would have faced casualties using aggressive pursuit doctrine. 180-plus Soviet aircraft destroyed using precision ambush approach directly traced to Tactical Bulletin 741. 1,200-plus Finnish civilian casualties prevented by increased Soviet bomber interception efficiency. Finnish Air Force War College calculated Juutilainen's tactical innovation saved more Finnish lives than his 94 personal victories. The mathematics of patience proved more lethal than the mathematics of aggression. Eino Ilmari Juutilainen survived 437 combat missions. Never shot down, never wounded, never bailed out. 94 confirmed victories, personal logbook claimed 126. Top-scoring non-German fighter ace of World War II. Finnish Air Force, Karelian Air Command, Risala Air Base, present day. Advanced Fighter Tactics Course, Week 6. Includes module Juutilainen Principle. Teaching points: patience as tactical advantage. Delaying engagement until favorable conditions exist increases survival and victory probability. Ammunition conservation.
Precision fire discipline extends operational capability. Solo operations risk assessment. When numerical disadvantage prohibits conventional engagement, unconventional approach may yield superior outcome. Modern Finnish F/A-18 Hornet pilots study Juutilainen's engagement patterns. Not because modern air combat resembles World War II. It doesn't, because underlying principle remains valid. Mathematical certainty beats aggressive uncertainty. Soviet-Russian fighter doctrine evolved differently. Emphasis remained on aggressive pursuit. Numerical superiority, extended engagement. American fighter doctrine, post-Korea, incorporated elements similar to Juutilainen's approach. One pass, haul ass. Vietnam-era F-4 Phantom tactic acknowledging that extended dogfights with inferior turning MiG-17 aircraft was tactically unsound. 3 questions remain unanswered 84 years later. Question 1. Why did Juutilainen never accept a wingman? His stated reason: I flew better alone. But Finnish Air Force repeatedly offered experienced wingmen. He refused every assignment. Theory A. Solo operations gave complete tactical freedom. No coordination required. Theory B. Psychological factor. Gamekeeper mentality required isolation. Theory C. Mathematical. Adding second pilot doubled risk of loss without doubling effectiveness. Juutilainen never explained fully. Question 2. Did Soviet commanders identify him personally during war? Soviet intelligence documents mention ghost pilot, but no documents declassified show they knew his name or service number. After war, Soviet veterans reported they'd heard of Finnish ace who never missed.
Whether Soviet command targeted him specifically remains unclear. Question 3. How many victories were actually his? Official confirmation, 94. Personal logbook, 126. Gap of 32 victories, explained by Finnish verification requirements. But some historians question, could one pilot really achieve 126 victories in 437 missions? That's 1 victory per 3.5 missions. No German ace achieved this ratio except Hans-Joachim Marseille, 158 victories, 388 missions, 1 per 2.5 missions. But Marseille flew against less experienced opponents in North Africa. Did Juutilainen overclaim? Or were his claims accurate but unverifiable? Finnish military historian Carl Fredrik Gaust spent 20 years analyzing Juutilainen's logbook against Soviet loss records. His conclusion, published 2007, of disputed 32 victories, Soviet records confirm probable losses for 23. 9 remain unexplained, either Finnish overclaim or Soviet records incomplete. 23 confirmed, 9 uncertain, 94 verified. The Ghost's final tally? Somewhere between 94 and 117. We'll never know for certain, and maybe that's fitting for a pilot who made invisibility his greatest weapon. What do you think? Does solo operations' mathematical advantage outweigh wingman protection benefits? Drop your assessment in comments. They called him cautious. They said he lacked aggressive temperament. They were wrong. Not because Juutilainen was superhuman, because patience mattered more than aggression. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't the one with the fastest aircraft or the biggest guns. It's the one who waits for the certain shot and takes it only once. If this deep dive into tactical patience and mathematical warfare fascinated you, check out next week's video. Navy called this 29-year-old too reckless, then he sank the entire Japanese mobile fleet in 96 hours. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment. What modern military technology would benefit most from Juutilainen's patient hunter approach?